Welcome and buenos dias from San Diego, California. We are reaching you in English, Spanish, and Portuguese through a unique and complex international telecommunications network via satellite, microwave, and cable. The International Training Center at San Diego State University brings us together once again through this original video conference program, which joins distinguished organizations representing education, business, and government in Mexico, Cuba, the Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, Panama, Colombia, Venezuela, Peru, Ecuador, Brazil, Bolivia, Paraguay, and Argentina. We also welcome Spain, the United States of America, the Organization of American States in Washington, D.C., and the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, in Geneva, Switzerland. Our hearts go out to those who have lost and are missing loved ones and friends as a result of the deplorable terrorist attack leveled on the United States on Tuesday, September 11th, 2001. Indeed, we do today's presentation with heavy hearts and an increased awareness of the fragility and preciousness of human life. We approach our work with an enhanced need to make our lives meaningful. And we embrace today's conference with the passion and belief that education is one of our most important tools in fostering human connection and promoting healing. During our program today, we will examine the new generation e-commerce and related services, the value of networks of users and expanding connectivity. This is the 8th video conference of the year 2001 series on new generation knowledge for productivity and global success. I'm Jan Andersen, Associate of the ITC, and your moderator for today's program. As you are all aware of, a number of companies that based their business model solely around the potential benefits provided by the Internet have folded. It really started with businesses that based their revenue projections primarily on advertising sales. Then followed online retailers or e-tailers. Finally, online businesses selling to other businesses. The reason for these companies' disappearance was basically their inability to generate profits quickly. At the same time, though, one must remember that technologies that make it possible to share information and conduct transactions over the Internet are far better and more efficient than ever. New software and hardware products are introduced to the marketplace daily with the sole aim of enhancing our ability to share information and conduct transactions over the Internet. Although many e-commerce companies have failed, the fundamentals of facilitating e-commerce are as viable as ever. This reminds me of what happened with the telephone industry about 20 years ago. At the time, it was very costly to make a long-distance telephone call. International calls were even more expensive. Today, the cost for both is dramatically lower. And though the margins are lower now for telecommunication providers, the increased usage still makes it a viable business. Dr. Lois Olson, our first presenter, recognizes that there is no sure path to success in the Internet space. She will look at and discuss the features and benefits of the Internet that impact us as consumers and as manufacturers. She will also address which industries are best suited from an e-commerce drawing on the lessons of those who have tried and often failed in their attempts at capitalizing on the Internet. Our second presenter, Dr. Peter Andersen, will look in some detail at the evolution of the Internet and the corresponding myths that have developed about the industries in the e-commerce space. Specifically, he will address how new technologies are adopted by a society and what's required for a technology such as the Internet to become popular. Peter will also touch upon the developments that are taking place within m-commerce. Let me introduce our presenters for today's program. Dr. Lois Olson is a lecturer for the marketing department in the College of Business Administration at San Diego State University. Her research and consulting experience is centered on international markets and global company strategies. She consults with clients in the processed food and beverage industries, the apparel industry, and the consumer goods industry. Her articles have appeared in such prestigious publications as the Journal of International Marketing, the Sloan Management Review, and the Journal of International Business. Lois holds a Master's of Science from Cornell University, an MBA from Boston College, and a doctorate in business administration from United States International University. Lois, it's great to have you back at the ITC program, and we look forward to your insights today. Our second speaker, Dr. Peter Andersen, has previously moderated the program, as you know, and we are excited to have him as a presenter for this program. He's professor of communication with the College of Professional Studies and Fine Arts at San Diego State University. He is also Associate Director of the International Center for Communications and Director of Research for the Japan-U.S. Telecommunication Research Institute. His research interests include nonverbal behavior, communication in close relationships, intercultural communication, and the impact of communication technology. Peter's latest book is Nonverbal Communication, Forms and Functions. Peter's authorship also includes over 50 journal articles and 100 convention papers. Peter holds a Master's of Science degree from Illinois State University and a Ph.D. from Florida State University. Welcome, Peter.
Good morning.
We look forward to your presentation. Before we begin our first module, I would like to ask our speakers to comment on how organizations should maximize their e-commerce. It seems that we are moving towards a future where employees, suppliers, customers, and products are increasingly linked via the Internet. Given this move, does an organization need a complete transformation to capitalize on e-commerce? Or can it rely on its trusted and proven business models? How important is management involvement in such a move towards e-commerce? And how much of a role does culture play in a successful move to e-commerce? Peter, would you like to address that for us?
Yeah, as we will learn throughout this show, a company does not have to change its entire business model and move solely to e-commerce. In fact, those companies that have done that haven't been particularly successful. As we'll also learn during the show, the blend between bricks and clicks, between the bricks and mortar businesses and electronic businesses are actually the most successful. As far as culture goes, there is no cultural obstacle in most cases to doing electronic commerce, although traditional cultures may be somewhat less willing and able to quickly adopt new technologies that are not consistent with some of the more traditional norms of their culture.
Lois, what about the business model in e-commerce and the cultural changes? Do you have any different slant on this, or?
Well, it's very important that management is on board with moving towards e-commerce, but is also not forcing the whole organization to go totally into e-commerce. It's sort of a contradiction. You can't throw out the old, but you must also embrace the new at the same time. And management has to be leading that. Management has to be willing to say, we're moving to an electronic world, but at the same time, we're not surrendering what we've known from 10 years or 20 years or 100 years of past history.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now let's go on to Module 1, where Lois will draw on the lessons learned by e-commerce companies, and she will look at which industries are best suited for e-commerce technology.
Thank you. From the mid to the late 1990s, it seemed that the expression .com was as commonplace as periods in sentences. Companies were establishing their domain names and building websites, whether they knew how to access their own website or not. Consumers learned to surf, even if they lived hundreds of miles from the ocean, as they took to surfing the web. Investors funded both ends of the e-commerce production consumption channel by fighting to throw money into the .com revolution. As occurred in the 1870s with the advent of railroads, at the turn of the century with electricity, in the 1920s with the automobile, and in the 1980s with the personal computer, everyone expected life, as we had known it, to be completely different than just a few years earlier. The recent demise of many of the best-known .com firms has forced everyone to evaluate the Internet and its potential more realistically now that the fantasy has subsided. Certainly, the Internet has the capacity to change our lives as both producers and consumers. We might be best served, however, to consider this change an evolution rather than a revolution. In the former, we take the best of the past as we incorporate new elements. In the alleged Internet revolution, we attempted to throw out all we knew from years of business and practical experience and start from scratch. Most firms and investors who considered the change a revolution are now starting from scratch again with nothing. We could certainly benefit from borrowing some of our Asian neighbors' behavior of weaving together elements from the past and the present and then logically and incrementally moving forward without having a giant garage sale on all we previously knew. Given that, it is time to examine which features of the Internet have the ability to change our lives, both as producers and consumers, and which features we know from years of previous success that we do not want to change. In many ways, the Internet's strengths are also its weaknesses. Let me first address some of the shortcomings of the e-marketplace. The Internet lowers the cost of communicating and improves all participants' ability to communicate. However, many have forgotten that while participants in any online exchange may want to shorten or abbreviate their interaction, especially the boring, routine aspects of the exchange, they do not want to stop communicating with each other. This mandates that firms evaluate the entire process from raw material acquisition to final consumer purchase in order to improve productivity, profitability and to understand that the benefits will not be realized equally by all industries or by all players in the process. There are many arenas in the economic community where the benefits of a fully web-enabled marketplace are minimal. Until we have the ability to ionize products and beam them directly through the internet connection, as we have seen on TV shows like Star Trek and in movies such as Star Wars, a number of industries involved in the production and distribution of tangible products and services will realize less benefits from the internet than those with intangible offerings. There are many employees within the channels of production and distribution who have to get their hands dirty. Such a position in the channel where tangible products are being manufactured and distributed often requires a significant infrastructure investment in order to become competitive. But their competitiveness, more often than not, does not rely on the company having a substantial online presence. These firms are relatively weak online performers, sharing less in the burgeoning e-commerce economy. The industry sectors that are not well suited to take full advantage of the internet include infrastructure-dependent companies, manufacturers, companies with products or services that cannot be delivered online, and retailers. Infrastructure-dependent industries are those whose products depend on the infrastructure for comfortable delivery and acquisition of the purchase. We have all heard that now your business can go anywhere in the world. Of course, an individual living in Tibet may be able to log on the web, comparison shop, and order a product from your firm in Brazil to be delivered to his home. Now, how do we get the product delivered from Brazil to Tibet? We are making the assumption that the person ordering in Tibet has a good internet connection, does not have the power periodically shut off, and does not have to pay 1/4 of his monthly salary to log on for an hour. Beyond that, however, we have to consider the whole process of having the product fit with his lifestyle and the local infrastructure. Let me give you a non-internet example of infrastructure requirements necessary in order for a product to truly benefit the consumer. I spend a lot of time in China. With a one-child policy firmly in place, there is a phenomena of the little emperor, or the six-pocket syndrome. The latter means that each child has 2 parents, 4 grandparents. That's a total of 6 pockets available to provide for and buy the child what he or she wants. In the United States, most families have large baby carriages to push their child around outside the house. Some baby carriages are nearly as large as a small car and are fully equipped with package racks and cup holders for both child and parent. Many have asked me if the Chinese market, which gives birth to 20 million little emperors and empresses annually, buys huge quantities of extravagant baby carriages for their children. No. They would love to pamper their children in these high-tech chariots, but they do not have the infrastructure to support them. Streets and sidewalks in China are uneven in surface, and transferring from one to another is difficult due to uneven curbs, stairs, and virtually no ramps. Apartments are small and have no space to park the carriage. Often the apartment is a 4-story walk-up and would require grandma carrying the child in the vehicle all the way up the stairs. In the United States, many parents drive these oversized sport utility vehicles and can easily transport the oversized baby carriage in the back of the car. A Chinese bus is already so crowded that it requires people to push passengers onto the bus, allowing no room for the carriage. Such a baby carriage in China, while desired, is an impossibility, given the infrastructure. Those types of infrastructure requirements are necessary for solid internet sales worldwide. The consumer must have a credit or a debit card that enables him or her to safely pay online. Any product purchased over the internet must also be able to be shipped within the country via adequate ground or air transport. I have seen Coca-Cola be delivered to distant villages on the backs of elephants in Southeast Asia. As a brand loyal user of Coke and Diet Coke, I am glad to see those elephants arrive. but I would not necessarily want the items that I order on the internet to arrive by that same method. A product ordered online must also be able to be delivered in perfect condition to the consumer's home or business. In many countries, home delivery is not an option. Many of the large multinational delivery firms, such as UPS, are gearing up to pick up the slack created by the lack of reliable delivery by the host country's postal service. These firms must repeatedly deal with traffic congestion in urban areas, as well as the long, expensive distances between some rural areas. An integral part of purchase in the United States is the ability to return merchandise. While this practice is very rare in developing nations and in many other developed nations, foreign firms may have to match the return policy of U.S. firms in order to be competitive. The purchaser must then have the ability to repackage the product and ship it back to the sender in order to exercise the return policy option. The sellers and the distributors have to establish a system to receive and evaluate the returned goods, reimburse the customer, replace the returned products if required, and go through the entire shipping process again. Last year, LL Bean, a clothing provider, sold $1 billion worth of merchandise and received 17%, or $170 million worth of merchandise in returns. The second industry sector not able to take full advantage of the Internet is manufacturing. There are distinct advantages the Internet offers manufacturing firms in supply requisition and management, in Internet operations, in restructuring and streamlining work within the company, and in enabling the firm to innovate. However, where the Internet surpasses previous operations is in intangibles such as information processing, not intangibles such as providing huge warehouses and factories. Firms in shipbuilding and automobiles certainly use e-commerce to communicate with suppliers and consumers, but the proportion of benefits to them are not what they are to some service providers. A third industry sector that is unable to take full advantage of the Internet is comprised of companies whose products or services cannot be delivered online. In recent years, many have been surprised at how creative we have become and the types of products that have been delivered online, such as loan or mortgage information, music, education, software, or movies. However, until we enter a world of virtual haircuts, and that does not mean for the man who is completely bald, we have to interact with the hair cutter. The stylist, the dentist, the physical therapist can provide information online and perhaps reduce the consumer's anxiety or the provider's time in repeating things to every single customer. But as with many physical products, such as cars, boats, or cans of paint, we still need the physical interface. The fourth category of businesses not able to maximize the use of the Internet is retailers. Not too long ago, many thought that retail sales would be a home run on the Internet and that markets and malls would soon be deserted. In the past year, 3 of the biggest e-tailers have consumed every bit of the large sums investors poured into their operations and then some, and have been forced to close operations. These companies are Webvan.com, the last surviving online grocery shopping and delivery operation. Pets.com, a supplier of pet foods, pet medicines, and pet toys and equipment. And eToys. E-tailing is not just about exciting and professional websites, but about actually being able to deliver products with the best value in a timely fashion and in good condition. Many online stores had little or no experience in providing products in large quantities and in a physical environment, but they had flashy marketing. An introduction to the elementary business course 101 teaches that all good marketing starts with a good product or service, not just with sexy Super Bowl advertising. There are, however, a few individuals who really hate shopping, but they usually have wives or mothers who do most of it for them gladly. The vast majority of us like to shop for fun things. Yes, buying paper towels or toilet paper is boring and routine, But shopping at the mall on a Saturday afternoon and stopping at the food court for a luxurious, fattening snack is a very pleasing experience. We buy that sweater we really don't need because it looks so beautiful, and after we pick it up to feel the soft, warm wool, it would be impossible not to buy it. Clicking to buy paper towels online makes our life simpler, but clicking to buy the sweater does not really make our life richer. In fact, we lose the experience with our family and our friends in the mall. The entertainment and emotional aspect of shopping cannot be denied. After all, the grocery stores, which operate on very small margins, found decades ago that they could realize substantial margins on the candy and gum at the checkout counter, appealing to our emotional impulses. Now, let's take a look at some of the benefits of e-commerce. While the advent of the railroads did not substantially alter medicine in the mid-19th century, the meatpacking industry in the United States grew dramatically, and the consumer was soon able to eat pork or beef grown from the Midwest, regardless of where he lived. Similarly, some businesses have benefited tremendously from e-commerce. Companies that use the Internet to broker information and enable its consumers and producers to automate routines and repetitive processes benefit the most from the Internet. These types of companies include operations that benefit from speed of communication, companies that control large amounts of information, businesses that have mastered logistics, businesses driven by innovation, and operations that require repetitive behaviors from buyers. First, let's look at operations that benefit from speed of communication. Recently, Priceline.com, a travel site that allows consumers to bid on their airplane seat, their hotel reservation, or car rental, posted its first profit. The site benefits the consumer with low prices and offers the travel and tourism industry the ability to sell their seat, bed, or car at the last minute at a lower price and gain some contribution to the bottom line. After all, if the hotel is not able to rent room number 435 on Thursday, but has two families who want the room on Friday night, they cannot stockpile the room and tell the guests that they are both staying in the room on Friday because it was vacant the previous night. The online service allows the hotel to sell the room at the last minute at a low price. The second group of companies that benefit substantially from the Internet are those that provide the consumers with large amounts of information and purchases that are infrequent or are typically a first-time purchase, such as one's child looking to select a college, a couple planning their honeymoon, or buying a mattress. The consumer cannot be an expert. The wrong choice, however, can be disastrous. The e-market allows consumers to access and process the information, comparison shop, and control the rate at which they process that information. Consumers have a tremendous ability to make intelligent choices, making them more satisfied and possibly be brand loyal customers. In return, the producer has the ability to remember that consumer and provide him with direct routes to an information search when he returns to the site. The provider can also use this information to understand his consumers, individually and in the aggregate, and ascertain who, for instance, prefers no smoking sections, is looking for a certain type of book, or what their regular weekly order is. These features not only make tedious activities easier for the consumer, but they also create substantial switching costs, because he realizes it would take time and energy to become that familiar a customer on another site. The third category of businesses that benefit from the Internet are those that have mastered logistics. Occasionally, a firm can begin as a solely online operation and truly understand the logistics of delivering products and services efficiently. Generally, however, it is the firm that has already mastered the logistics offline that often has the competitive advantage in the online marketplace. The firm that can marry the logistics and information flow can offer the consumer real added value in price and in psychic price, the time and the energy involved. For example, Walmart has operated as the most superior firm in offline logistics over the past 3 decades. To enter the e-market and expedite the processing of information while allowing the consumer to review that data at his own pace in his own manner offers Walmart not just an additive, but virtually a multiplicative advantage over the competition. Fourth are businesses that are driven by innovation. For a firm where models and styles do not change frequently, information processing